Welcome to Rod Martin Live. A little change of time, but because there's so much going on, we wanted to take the opportunity to share the latest of what's been happening over the last few days. As always, I am joined by the namesake of the show, entrepreneur, futurist, and philosopher capitalist, Rod Martin. Rod, how are you today?
Doing well.
So we have left the friendly confines of the Martin Library. We're back here at a beautiful part of Grace Hall. And over the last few days, since we were last with you here on Rod Martin Live, we had left off talking about Mitch McConnell. He said there was going to be a vote. There is a vote. The triumphant, dramatic return of Senator John McCain. And it kind of felt like a summer blockbuster. All the hype. Finally, 7 years of promising repeal and replace, and it was kind of a dud. What is going on in the Senate, Rod?
Well, I wouldn't call it a dud. And I would point out that last week, and you can go back and check us out because it's on our website at rodmartin.org, and it's also on Facebook, so you can go back and look. You get to check my predictions. I told you when everybody was saying that this was dead, I said, it's not dead. Mitch McConnell wouldn't be scheduling a vote if it were dead. Guess what? All of the lies you were told by the media last week, oh, it's dead, it's over, it's dead. Nope, wasn't dead. So, sure enough, we had the vote.
Yes.
51 to 50. Pence broke the tie.
With the tiebreaker. Thank you, Vice President Pence.
We went forward to debate.
Yes.
Now, we're debating. And that's the thing. The 2015 bill did fail. We lost a few senators on that. But note how that happened. We didn't just lose a bunch of people who don't want to repeal and replace. Yeah, we lost Collins and Murkowski. We expected to do that.
Yeah.
You've got some other people like Lindsey Graham, and who the heck ever knows what Lindsey's thinking. But,
that's right.
But we also lost people like Mike Lee. A lot of good conservatives, Rand Paul. This tells you that the issue is not a refusal to repeal and replace. The issue is that they don't agree on exactly how. And for all of our kibitzing about the 2015 bill, hey, if you passed it then, you can pass it again, etc. A fair point, one that I have repeatedly made. I'm not arguing with anybody who feels that way.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, the 2015 bill wasn't perfect. The 2015 bill was what McConnell and Ryan could get everybody on the team for.
At that time.
At that time.
Right.
And honestly, from a conservative perspective, it is imperfect. It could use some tweaking. Now, if you're a dirty, evil rhino like Collins and Murkowski, you're looking at this and you're saying, oh my gosh, this doesn't keep enough socialism. So, it
does too much to destroy what we like in a command government-driven system.
We're so excited about socialized medicine so we can kill our own Charlie guards. They're all about that.
Yeah.
So of course we have rhinos. We know this.
Yes.
We know that the entire Republican conference is not united. But you will notice nearly all of the Republican conference was united. We lost very, very few Republicans who were gone for a wrong reason.
Yeah.
We lost a few Republicans who want to improve the bill.
Yes.
So that's very encouraging. The debate isn't over, and what we're going to see is sausage making. We may not fully like what comes out of this, but I'm very optimistic that we're actually going to do what we've promised.
So let's say we got everything we're expecting out of the Senate. We get a repeal. Where do we go from there?
In whole or in part.
Where do we go from there?
But
what does that leave us with?
Yeah, let's assume we get everything that we're asking for right now.
That's right.
We'd be at about 20% of what we want. And I really want to stress that. And some of you guys on Facebook have been arguing with me about this a little bit in the past few days. And I just got to tell you, it ain't never over. Just like it isn't for the Democrats.
Right.
The Democrats knowingly passed Obamacare, knowing that what they really wanted was in a House bill that had been defeated.
That's right.
knowing that the Senate bill they did pass in 2010 was not all of what they wanted,
right,
and knowing that if they had gotten 100% of what they were after in 2010, it wasn't what they really wanted, which was single-payer, socialized medicine.
Right.
Obama couldn't have been clearer in several speeches that you can check out on YouTube back in 2007, back before he was even a candidate for president, about the fact that history had taught them, particularly Hillary's just disaster in 1993 and 94. They couldn't get all the way to where they were going in one leap. So they wanted to create something that would be so awful that all of you would demand a big government solution that would ultimately look like the National Health Service in Great Britain.
Create a chaos in the system, destabilize the healthcare system, so that they can swoop in with their ultimate answer, which is what they really wanted, a single-payer system.
As Axelrod put it, never let a crisis go to waste.
That's right.
So they were always aiming for more, and they understood that you know, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
One bite at a time, that's right.
So that's where we are today. If we repeal Obamacare, completely repeal it, which is going to be very difficult to do, but let's say we do that with 52 senators, which is all we have.
Right.
If we were able to do that, which would probably be a 51-50 vote, if we could pull it off, and I am optimistic that we will, if we do that, all we're doing is going back to where we were. And where we were was terrible.
Yeah, it wasn't
That's
great.
not what we wanted.
That's right.
That was just what we had. It was certainly better than what we have now. But it was not a conservative solution. It was this horrible, progressive, creeping statism that has been accumulating barnacles on the ship of state for decades, starting particularly with some of the more egregious price control measures that are built into Medicare and Medicaid since about 1968. So, and don't forget, when we passed Medicare and Medicaid, the result of that price fixing scheme that's built into that bill was an immediate tripling of the cost of just about every medical service in this country. That's our baseline point, and that's a year before I was born. So we have been accumulating terrible healthcare policy for a very, very long time. Long before that, certainly before I was born once again, and certainly not just since March of 2010. So merely repealing is not anywhere near enough. It's just the first step. So if we want true market-based reform that will bring down the prices of your health care by as much as 2/3, actually give you choice, actually give you freedom, actually give you not just the best health care in the world, which we have in America, but at the best price in the world, which we can have in America.
That's true access.
Absolutely
That's
can.
really true
access for everybody, and such a difference, by the way, in that model, that it will be easy to provide for those who can't afford it.
Right.
That won't be a problem if you do this right. If we want to do those things, that's going to take more senators, and there's simply no way around that. So we should be very hopeful, because as you know, in 2018, the Democrats are defending 25 Senate seats versus our 8. Many of those seats that they have to defend are in Trump states, in red states generally, but certainly in states that Donald Trump carried. Those people,
purplish blue states that went for Trump, and we have a fighting chance in this next year to win over to our column.
Absolutely. I mean, even if Mitch McConnell screws this up, and I actually have a lot more faith in Mitch than I did 2 years ago.
Sure.
Just the way he handled the whole thing on stopping Merrick Garland and getting Neil Gorsuch through shows me a lot of reason for hope in that man that I had frankly lost over the past few years. But the truth is, even if Mitch McConnell completely screws this up, a year from now we're going to be talking about electing a bunch of senators. I think we will elect a bunch of senators. I can't promise you we'll get to 60 votes, But people keep telling me that's impossible. They keep citing, oh, our high water mark was 2004 with 55. That is baloney. First, because nobody believed we'd get to 55
That's
then.
right.
Second, because 2 years earlier, nobody believed we could take control of the Senate in an off year, and we did. Third, because actually it isn't that historically uncommon to get to 60 plus votes. Barack Obama just had 60 plus votes. In fact, twice in my lifetime, both LBJ and Jimmy Carter had 68 votes. That's more than the 67 needed to overturn vetoes, or override vetoes. That's more than the 67 needed to amend the Constitution. It is not uncommon in American life for a party to have that kind of dominance. It is uncommon for Republicans since Herbert Hoover. But the fact is, as you know, we control the vast majority of governorships,
state houses,
state senates, and increasingly Congress, now the White House, and soon we hope the Supreme Court. So when you look at the trends across America, the Democrat demography is destiny concept that was supposed to be our doom has obviously not panned out the way they imagined. And with border crossings, illegal border crossings now down 73% before a single brick is laid of that wall, with ICE arrests up 38% just since Donald Trump took office, with the kinds of things that we're seeing, with the New York Times bemoaning self-deportation, and
Never thought I would read that.
Central Americans don't want to come to America illegally anymore. And they're all upset about that because they know that they're going to illegally get those illegals to vote for their guys. With those kinds of trends in place, demography is not, in a Democrat sense, going to be their destiny. They are facing real Americans who face real changes in the job market, real escalating costs in healthcare, real war zones in their cities like Chicago, where you're literally less safe now than you would be if you lived in Afghanistan.
That's true.
They are facing these things because of Democrats, because of Democrat policies, because of Democrat priorities, and because of Democrat refusal to take care of the folks. And Donald Trump is changing all of that. So I think 2018 is going to be a big year for us. I think 60 votes is possible, and I would actually go so far as to say that at the outside, we could hit 63 senators.
Let's say we just got to 55, right? There's conventional wisdom, we could get to 55, right? You hear that as a high water mark. Don't you believe at 55, number one, we get a little cushion there?
Yes.
But it's the type of 55, because what we haven't talked about, Rod, is the challenges to a Murkowski and a Collins in a primary that gives us a 55 that's not 55 Republicans in name only, or 52 solid conservatives and the 3 Republicans in name only, so we still have that breathing room. We could have 55 solid Republicans that get us what we need to get, can advance the conversation and don't bail out like they did at a moment's notice with bringing up the 2015 repeal.
That's absolutely true. And before we go to the next thing, I want to stress, I continue to hear from people that, wasn't it wonderful when Republicans were really Republicans? Oh, it's so terrible how they are diminishing in their conservatism. Guys, are you awake? Are you paying attention? We're down to a handful of rhinos in the Senate. We're down to a handful of rhinos in the House. It's enough to throw a monkey wrench into things. It's enough to hurt us. It's enough to gum up the works. It's not enough to move legislation.
No.
It is not like it used to be. My entire lifetime, we have been moving away from the rhinos. When I was born, this was a party dominated by the Nelson Rockefellers and their ilk. This was not a conservative party. This became a conservative party because of Ronald Reagan. We went through some bad years where the Reagan wing of the party wasn't dominant, but the Reagan wing of the party was growing that whole time. That has asserted itself. That is the dominant part of the Republican Party today. And that's what encourages me so much about 2018. The kind of candidates we're electing right now are not John Kasich.
No.
They are not. They are conservative. They are for real. They aren't always perfect, and they frequently screw up, as all politicians do. But these are not your father's Republicans, and we are on the cusp of owning our own party for the first time in a century.
Speaking of John Kasich in Ohio, just as a quick comment to piggyback on what you're sharing, President Trump has a It's Great in America kind of rally in a deep blue, not even purple, a deep blue part of Ohio. He draws 13,000 people. Has people come on stage saying they've never voted Republican until Donald Trump. This isn't just a calling back of Reagan Democrats. We're seeing a Titanic type shift in the expectation of the public to what a Republican is and what a Democrat is. And it favors us to be more principle driven in 2018 and not feel, as you've alluded to, this tacking back to the center. If we're in the mushy moderate middle, if we become John Kasich, that's how we win. No, more and more.
That's how we get annihilated.
If we become more Ted Cruz, if we become more Donald Trump, that's what the people are yearning and clamoring for.
They absolutely are, and I know many of you don't believe it. And all I can say to you is Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Because you didn't believe that either. And I told you it was possible. I told you it was possible before Donald Trump said it was possible. I was writing about a coming Republican realignment years ago. Most recently wrote a big article on it in January of 2016 when everybody was just saying it was hooey. And I gave you 3 different paths with 3 different candidates who could potentially win the nomination as to how you could get there. Donald Trump got us there in a big way, and now we've got an opportunity to cement that. These are not Reagan Democrats. These are Trump Democrats. And they're conservative. They may not be conventional pro-life marchers or something, although they are pro-life. What they are is people who have looked at their party, the Democrat Party, and they can't recognize it. And I can't recognize it. I don't know who could recognize it. It is a different creature than it was even 10 years ago. And they know that something has gone horribly awry and that Donald Trump doesn't just talk about fighting, he actually fights. He might not win every battle, but I wouldn't bet against him much. And again, today, on issue after issue after issue, not only has Donald Trump kept his promises, but he has exceeded them. And today is one of those, and I don't want to get off into this, but today we hear Donald Trump saying that he won't allow a single transgendered person to serve in the military, which is totally diametrically opposed to what the Never-Trumpers in our own party said he would do. He's done this because he understands that it's a huge distraction. It costs phenomenal amounts of money to be given everybody who decides to sign up to go to combat a sex change surgery. It's nonsense. The military exists to defend America, not just a social experiment the way Obama and the Clintons treated it, but actually a free sex change surgery for anyone who will sign up. This is insane. And Donald Trump has nipped it in the bud. He is the guy that the Never-Trumpers said would never, ever do that, would in fact encourage it even more than Obama. And the exact opposite has been true. I'm happier with this president every day he is president. I am sure he is going to annoy the heck out of me at some point. But, and I wouldn't do everything he does, and I don't agree with his style 100% of the time. But he's awesome.
He's refreshing.
I don't know how we could have done better. I really, truly don't. And I love Ted Cruz, and I fought for him, and I bundled for him. But honestly, I don't know that any conventional Republican, no matter how conservative, could stand up to and weather the storm that Donald Trump faces every single day. We needed somebody like Trump to beat these guys, and we're going to beat them. Make no mistake. We're going to beat them.
So the real clamoring at that rally that we just talked about touches on what you were saying, this inaction in Congress on the president's agenda. And he's pointed out, and the reaction from the public, beyond the attacks and the prescriptions of the media, the mainstream media, is you said you were going to get something done, you've gotten it done, but now you've gotten to the point where you can't executive order your way out of everything. And you can't just executive decree your way out of everything.
Yeah, where do you think we are, Barack Obama?
That's right. You actually need Congress to step up and do some things. And it's interesting. You posted an article at rodmartin.org and were sharing with me earlier before we came on live that in order to see a Congress that actually is getting things done, gets to the point of small r republicanism, that we need to institute something that we haven't seen since the Cromnibus bills of '06. And that's something called regular order. Now, I don't think I'd ever describe anything in Washington, D.C.'s swamp as regular order, but we have been in irregular order, at least since 2006. What is regular order, and why does that give us a pathway to seeing real action from Congress?
Well, first, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on this because I know that when we start talking about parliamentary rules, your eyes glaze over, and I'm not going to do that to you. However, I do want to highlight a gentleman, the fellow who wrote this article. His name is Angelo Codavilla.
Yeah,
Pull out a book here.
You got a stack of these books on your desk.
Actually, let me hold that because it's awesome. You need to read this. This is called The Ruling Class: How They Corrupted America and What We Can Do About It. Angelo Codavilla. The introduction is by Rush Limbaugh. He made a phenomenal bestseller out of this, promoting this book on his show, and we are now promoting it on ours. And
we'll have a link available that you can get this.
We absolutely do. Angelo Codavilla has written this wonderful book, and it's a very short read. I read it in about 2 hours, and you must read it. It is essential to understand the ins and outs of why these people go to Washington and suddenly find more common cause with one another than with you.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, it actually doesn't really matter. There is a ruling class mindset that has infected our elites. And to be fair, we're actually pretty blessed in that because in many countries you have 2 or 3 ruling classes that are jockeying with each other, and occasionally they'll have a coup and one will be in and the other will be out. But in America, we do have a distinction between a ruling class that has its own interests it's serving, that is cross-party, and we have a country class, as Angelo would put it, that's the rest of us. Right. And this book is phenomenal at getting into the mindset of why that works and what you can do. That'll be the best 2 hours you spend this week or probably any week reading The Ruling Class. The article on our site that you've alluded to is about regular order. And the reality is that since about 2006, the roots are older, but since about 2006, both parties have been using what are called continuing resolutions, which in theory, the CR, you hear that a lot. You probably don't know what it is. What it is in theory a bill that says, well, this next year we'll spend exactly what we spent last year. We're not going to debate the details. And they get to the CR just at the moment that, you know, the government's running out of money or the debt limit is about to be hit or whatever. The catch is that they don't just do what they did last year. They actually have procedural mechanisms by which to insert all kinds of obnoxious things, and by doing it in this form, they can't debate them. Mm-hmm. So your normal representative or senator doesn't really have a say in this. The leadership does this in collusion with the president.
That's right.
A handful of people make all of these decisions, and it completely eviscerates any concept of responsibility on the part of your representative that you elected, who is supposed to be accountable to you, or for that matter, on the part of the government as a whole. It is fundamentally anti-small r Republican. It is against every principle of our system of government. We've been doing that now, again, as you said, since 2006. It has resulted in all kinds of calamity. And if we return to regular order, where every single thing, every amendment, every jot and tittle, every phrase, every sentence has to actually go through public debate. You no longer do things like, as Nancy Pelosi says, have to pass the bill so you can find out what's in it. with regular order, the way we have done business in the United States Congress from 1789 until about 2006, everything gets debated, everything gets a hearing, it's on the record, you get to hold people accountable. We aren't doing that anymore, and with the Republicans in control, there really isn't any excuse. I understand why they're doing it, because it gives them more control over the process and they have a lot to do. But you see that's not working, and we have to restore regular order.
You know, it's one of those small things. I know it's something parliamentary, but I'll be honest with you, and I think most people watching and that read the site would be in the same boat. I don't think we recognize that there's been a change to the regular order. And there's this idea of that it's always been top down.
Yes.
But taking and stripping the person that I elect to represent my voice in the halls of Congress and taking power completely out of their hands and placing it into an even smaller subset that is only wanting to keep and stay in power, regardless of what I feel as a citizen, as a taxpayer.
It's terrible.
It undermines our complete republic.
It's disgraceful, and it's another of those things exactly like the 60 vote rule. You keep being told
that's right
that well, we can't vote on such and such in the Senate because it would be wrong for us to get rid of the filibuster, which has been around since 1789 and it's foundational to our liberty. No, that's a complete lie, or at least a misunderstanding on the part of a lot of people. The 60 vote rule has nothing to do with the filibuster.
Nope.
The 60 vote rule actually eviscerates the filibuster. The filibuster is Mr. Smith goes to Washington.
That's right.
You actually have to stand up there and talk, which you do because you don't have to relinquish the floor until you physically have to relinquish the floor. You fall asleep, you have to go to the bathroom, something.
Right.
That's a real filibuster, and some guys have been able to stand up there and keep speaking for a very long time, and maybe they'll get a buddy to come in and relieve them. So
we
you'll
saw
have
it with
several.
Rand Paul. We saw it with Ted Cruz.
That's right.
Yeah.
You'll have several senators actually filibustering. The 60 vote rule says you don't have to do any of that, that you can't cut off a filibuster except by 60 votes. So these guys aren't even filibustering anymore.
Nope.
They just announced that they've got 40 votes, and so sucks for you guys. And they don't even speak. There's no real filibuster. The 60 vote rule was passed by Democrats in the 70s to achieve Democrat purposes. The idea that we continue that abomination is just ridiculous. And if we didn't have that rule, we would be able to pass the health care bill you want. That's the reality. So you guys need to encourage Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan. Restore regular order.
That's right.
And Mitch McConnell, bring back the real filibuster. That's essential. Now, I know we're short on time, but I would like to hit one thing about Russia and China.
Wait, Russia? You mean all we hear from the media? Russia, like Marsha, and the old Brady Bunch?
Covfefe.
I have to know. It's funny that you bring this up, because if not for a Russia investigation of tinkering and tampering with our sensitive elections, we don't hear about the really interesting thing that Russia's doing, Rod, and that is pointing missiles at China.
Yes. Why is Russia
pointing
nuclear missiles at China? And we have an article about that on the site this week, and I want you to check that out. Why is Russia pointing missiles at China? Take a moment to read that. We don't have time today to get into that in depth. But it highlights a point that, again, is getting lost in the shuffle, just as you say. We are constantly told, frequently by good conservatives who perhaps don't get some of these things as well as they should. They're concerned about the safety of America, and God love them for that. But we're constantly told that Russia and China are going to gang up and create a new global reserve currency in opposition to the dollar, which, of course, is nonsense because the Russian economy is smaller than the California economy. We're constantly told that they're allying, and every now and then you'll see a summit between Xi and Putin, and they'll get together and talk about how they're standing up against America and blah, blah, blah. And there's truth in some of that. It's not complete nonsense. But it's important to understand that the most dangerous threat on earth to Russia is China.
Mm-hmm.
And no one understands that better than Russia and China.
Yep.
The illegal immigration problem Russia faces of Chinese moving into their Pacific territories,
Right.
the maritime provinces, makes our illegal immigration problem look like nothing. Chinese school maps still depict large chunks of Siberia, Russian territory, as part of China. There is serious tension on that border. In 1969, in fact, the Soviets and the Communist Chinese nearly got into a nuclear war with one another. Those tensions may have subsided, but the underlying realities are still there. Am I predicting a war between these guys anytime soon? No, that's not my point. But the point is, Russia is a Potemkin village. Now, it's a great nation with a great artistic and cultural history. It's a great people. I don't want to demean them or insult them in any way. But I do want you to understand, this is a country with a birth rate that is collapsing. We talked about that last week to some degree. In general terms, Russia is possibly the worst offender in that regard. They are in free fall demographically.
Yeah.
They have 3 times the land area of anybody else. It is mostly empty, and it's emptying out. Losing all of the territory that they did lose at the end of the Cold War has put them in a much worse situation, and China is aggressively moving on that. Their nearly $1 trillion New Silk Road initiative directly places them in competition with Russia for influence over former Soviet Central Asia. Their military strength, which is growing apace, although it's not a huge threat to the United States, is absolutely a threat to Russian Siberia. And increasingly, we find China much, much more threatening to Russia, maybe not in any specific sense, but as the primary worry for Moscow. So yes, Russia is actually pointing a lot of nuclear missiles at China, and don't think the Chinese haven't noticed. Moreover, as you'll see in the article, those missiles aren't easily targeted at Japan, South Korea, or the United States. They are of a range and deployed in a way that pretty much limits their utility to blowing up Chinese troop formations and Chinese cities.
Right.
So yeah, it's very interesting, and it has tremendous application to the situation in North Korea.
You know, there's a lot of great insights, both from a geopolitical perspective, a technology perspective, a military perspective, and the political insight that you get when you visit rodmartin.org. And we try to touch on some of the topics that you get a lot of questions on Facebook, get comments on in the blog, and even get emails from you. Please, I'd like to hear a little bit more insight on that. And that's kind of how we decide the topics we'll be covering on a week-to-week basis. So the greatest way for you to kind of shape where the conversation goes is to comment on Facebook on the rodmartin.org page, or to go to rodmartin.org, sign up for the emails, make sure that you're getting all of the articles, put your questions and comments there, and really start to understand what's going on. You know, we constantly say here that you can read about the world anywhere, but you come to rodmartin.org to understand it. And if you want to understand the place that America has now in this new century and what it will be, then you need to get Rod's special report, and we do it absolutely free. It's called The New American Century, Why America Will Be Stronger Than You Think. You can visit rodmartin.org/NAC for New American Century, or you can text ROD Report, R-O-D Report, no space, all one word, to 33444. That's ROD Report to 33444. You'll get that special report absolutely free, and then you'll never miss an email or an insight on a weekly basis. We don't cram up your email inbox, but Rod selects a handful of really insightful articles, writes his own articles, and then we send them to you so that you're always informed and know what's going on. Like our call to action this week of letting your member of Congress know that you want regular order back in Congress. Well, I want to thank you, Rod, for sharing this time with us, and I want to thank all of you for being loyal fans and followers. Do us a favor. It helps us share this message and these insights with more people when you hit that like button, hit the heart button, and share it. Share it on your page. Share it with friends. Tag them in it so that we can make sure that good, principled perspectives on what's going on every day in the world around us gets shared on social media and online. Thank you, Rod, for your time. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week right here at rodmartin.org.